Hello everyone, I'm Michael. Welcome to class again. Nice to have you all here today. How much is worth sacrificing for a good education? In the popular drama A Love for Separation, three families in Shanghai face intense mental, emotional, and economic stress for the sake of an education abroad. This show is a reflection of the real lives of over 250,000 Chinese families with a member studying abroad. But what makes a Western education different than a Chinese education? Our topic today is educating the educators. We are going to talk about three things in today's lesson. First, comparing different college admissions. Second, behind the admission, exam-oriented education or liberal education. And third, the changing educational landscape. One of the most universal desires is to be successful in life. A major factor of an individual's chance at success is their education. Higher levels of education, such as university, will open up paths towards a successful career. In order to reach the highest level of society, one needs to attend a top university. This is the root cause of the highly competitive university application process. At a young age, students need to choose what they want to do for the rest of their life and figure out how to make it happen. The beginning of the final year of high school is the appropriate time for students to finish making decisions and plans. At that point, they should figure out what scores they need to achieve for the rest of the year and try their best to make it happen. To have the best chance at success, students need to use their time effectively. There are major differences in the university application process depending on where the student lives. These differences have a huge impact on a country's attitude toward education. We will explore this idea by comparing the application processes of Western countries and China. Also, we will discover how the application processes impact the entire education system of those countries. For high school students in Western countries, there are a lot of decisions to be made regarding education after high school. One of the first major decisions is whether to go to college or university. In common American English, the words college and university are often used interchangeably. However, there are some important differences to be aware of. In America, a college only offers undergraduate study, whereas a university offers a full range of undergraduate and graduate programs. A college can also be a part of a university. For example, Harvard College is part of Harvard University. Harvard College only offers undergraduate degree programs, while Harvard University offers both undergraduate and graduate programs. In the UK and Canada, universities are allowed to grant you a degree, while colleges are not. Colleges offer education after high school, which can grant you a diploma, but this is not as prestigious as a university degree. College education is focused on practical skills and only takes 1 or 2 years to complete. A college diploma is usually not transferable to other countries, so most international students will choose to apply for university. Many students do not need to worry, since most universities in many Western countries accept the majority of applicants. However, the most famous and prestigious universities receive an overwhelming number of applicants from all over the world. These universities are very selective in deciding which applicants to accept. In our course, the students understand what an achievement it is to be accepted by a top American university. Isn't it wonderful? He's been accepted to Stanford. So how does one apply? The application process depends on the country, so let's look at American universities first. Students are required to submit their SAT score. SAT stands for the Standardized Admissions Test. Students who are not native English speakers also need to take the test of English as a foreign language, otherwise known as TOEFL. Alternatively, they can take the International English Language Testing System, also known as the IELTS test. When applying to an American university, these tests are only the beginning. Universities want to see the applicant's high school grades, as well as any extracurricular activities, volunteer work, or special achievements. Several universities require applicants to write an essay or fill out several short response questions. They may also require a letter of recommendation from a teacher or principal. High school students in Western countries should be aware that each school may have their own unique requirements to follow. It is important to research online or even call the admissions department of the university to find out everything they need to submit. Another country with world-class universities worth considering is the United Kingdom, the birthplace of the English language. Before applying to a university in the UK, you should take the British A-level test. This is similar to the SAT test, and just like in the USA, non-native English speakers will also have to write the TOEFL or IELTS test. British universities have similar admission requirements to the USA. Universities judge students based on high school subject scores, extracurricular activities, volunteer work, and often an essay or letter of recommendation. Applying to university in China is simpler, yet much more intense. The basis for being accepted into the vast majority of universities in China is the National College Entrance Examination, better known as the Gaokao. The Gaokao is one of the most important events in a student's life, since it plays a large role in determining their chance of success in the future. While students from all over China will take the Gaokao, the test will differ depending on the province or city of the student. Additionally, universities have a limited quota of how many students they can accept from each province. Therefore, students who live in higher populated provinces have greater competition than students from areas with a lower population. The Gaokao is highly controversial since it puts all students in a fierce competition with each other. Students will spend their entire final year of high school studying for the test, while sacrificing all other aspects of their lives. As a writer and scholar of Chinese and American culture, Yish Zhen explains how students feel. The dreaded college entrance exam, the Gaokao, looms like a storm cloud over the entire school experience. Nevertheless, it provides less privileged students who study hard the chance to enroll in one of the country's best universities. Now that you are informed about the university application process of different countries, consider the possible reasons behind the differences. In the next two parts, we are going to look at two distinct methods of education and see how they compare. As we've seen in Part 1, Universities in different countries have different requirements for acceptance. Consequently, these countries have different methods of preparing students for university. Since the Chinese university application process is based around the Gaokao test, the high school experience is also based around the Gaokao test. Chinese high schools are an example of an exam-oriented education system. Across the Pacific Ocean, American universities have a variety of different requirements. They are looking for students who have participated in extracurricular activities and excelled in subjects of their choosing. As a result, American high schools base their education around these diverse admission requirements. American high schools are an example of a liberal education system. To describe exam-oriented education, the primary focus of it is to score well on exams. Students are taught the information they need to know for the exams, not necessarily what they need to know for the real world. Such an intense focus on exams produces strong test scores, but less opportunity to develop practical skills. The alternative to exam-oriented education is liberal education. At its core, a liberal education guides students to become free human beings in the world. It works to develop a student's communication and problem-solving skills to face challenges that may arise during their lives. Liberal education exposes students to many different learning strategies and areas of study, and allows them to focus on something specific that interests them. One major difference between a liberal school and an exam-oriented school is the curriculum. Schools divide the curriculum into different courses across different subjects as they see fit. This creates the possible paths that students may take towards graduation. The curriculum of exam-oriented schools is restricted to the core subjects included on exams. Any unrelated courses are seen as a waste of time and effort, which could be better spent studying for exams. All students have the same path toward graduation, which is seen as the best path for all students to succeed. The curriculum of a liberal school can vary depending on its size, available teachers, and equipment. Students are required to enroll in a few core courses, but are free to choose between a wide selection of optional courses. Since students are free to pursue a specific area of interest, the paths towards graduation for the students will diverge dramatically. The curriculum is also a legal document that teachers have to follow in both liberal and exam-oriented schools. They have the responsibility to teach specific skills and learning objectives throughout the course. The curriculum will also show the criteria for student assessment. While the curriculum outlines what needs to be taught, it is the teachers who have the biggest impact on the student's school experience. Let's compare the differences in teaching methods between liberal education and exam-oriented education. In an exam-oriented classroom, the central point is the teacher. They are the giver of all information and knowledge. Students must be open to receive knowledge based on their teacher's authority and experience. Usually, this method involves lecturing, storytelling, and note-taking. In a liberal classroom, the focal point is a problem which needs to be solved. Students must think critically about the problem and ask further questions. The teacher is there to guide the learners by adding new logic and examples into the discussion. Ideally, students will discover the solution to the problem on their own. After being taught a new concept or idea, students should be evaluated to make sure they understand. Evaluating a student in an exam-oriented system is simple. They are required to recall information from memory and use formulas to find the correct answers. The resulting score is the single measure of a student's worth to society. Students will likely think of their score as part of their identity. Evaluating students in a liberal education is much more complicated, since each student has learned about different subjects in different ways. There are many different ways to evaluate students. For example, an essay about what they have researched, a performance which explains an issue in the world, or a test with problems that can be figured out in different ways. We have identified two opposing approaches to education, but in reality, all schools will fall somewhere in the middle. A liberal school must have some written tests to monitor progress, and exam-oriented schools also have some problems that require critical thinking and creativity to solve. The two approaches to education previously mentioned each have their own advantages and disadvantages. To begin this comparison, let's examine the disadvantages of exam-oriented education. Instead of learning skills for the real world, students spend all of their time studying for a college entrance exam. Universities reject those who perform poorly on the exam. They have then wasted many years studying a narrow set of skills that they will likely not use in their future. The exam-oriented education system does not prepare students for any meaningful function in society other than to go to university. Another disadvantage in an exam-oriented system is that students will study for countless hours, memorizing known information and formulas to solve problems in a certain way. This does little to prepare students for a challenge where they must be creative and innovative. Students are never given time to fool around and experiment with things they are interested in, and are less likely to be passionate about learning. While exam-oriented education has many drawbacks, it also has a few key advantages. Scoring well on an exam is a goal that students can work towards throughout the year. The students know why they are studying and have a clear path to academic success. Parents of the students are more likely to support their educational needs because they can see results from the exam scores. When students study for exams by memorizing information and mathematical formulas, they remember it. Memorization is an efficient method of acquiring knowledge. Students are likely to remember what they learned in school throughout their entire lives. An important feature of an exam-oriented education system is that it's simple to control and keeps consistent across many different schools. Having set learning expectations for students allows them to travel to different schools and continue with what they have been learning. An exam-oriented system also ensures that teachers are teaching the right material. It is difficult to watch over every teacher and make sure they are teaching and grading their students properly. However, if one class scores far lower than average on an exam, it reveals that teacher's lack of effectiveness. Without an exam, teachers have the chance to teach incorrect information or biased opinions. In large countries such as China, exam-oriented education is practical, since there may be high numbers of students competing for limited space in universities. Figuring out who deserves to be accepted to university can be a difficult process. Admission officers need to have a simple system to sort through the large numbers of applications received. Switching over to liberal education, one major disadvantage is that teachers may have evaluation bias. It is very difficult to evaluate students fairly and consistently without a standard test or standard answers. Teachers may favor certain students and give them better scores based on their own opinion. Students in liberal schools will hope for a teacher who gives out high grades easily, so they can be accepted to a good university. Another disadvantage in a liberal education system is that the quality of education can greatly vary. Public schools depend on limited public funds, while elite private schools are able to afford better resources. Often, wealthy parents will make donations through school fundraisers, further widening the gap in opportunities between rich and poor families. A liberal education system benefits students by giving them practical skills that will help them throughout their lives. Each student has a chance to find a meaningful role in society, regardless of academic ability. In the long run, liberal education benefits the country. It slowly creates a young population of problem solvers and innovators who are capable of taking on the country's challenges in the future. If extracurricular activities and sports are considered important for acceptance into university, then students spend more time doing activities and sports with their friends rather than studying. This time is spent discovering the real world and working as a team with other students. When universities shift their priority to accepting more well-rounded students, it motivates students to develop areas of their life other than academics. Giving students the freedom of choice will likely help them figure out what they want to focus on in their careers. Recently in China, the education system has been slowly changing to become more liberal. Some students and parents oppose reforms which may lower their chances to get accepted to universities. However, most of the population agrees that students are lacking practical skills as a result of the exam-oriented education system. However, it is a delicate process to reform the education system, and there is a risk of putting students in rural areas at a disadvantage. Since rural schools are more remote, it would likely take longer for changes to be made. This may cause universities to start favoring students from urban schools if they have had better access to a liberal education. Rather than choosing between one education system or the other, the best choice is to discover the ideal middle ground between the two. Let's quickly review what we discussed. First, we compared different college admissions of Western countries and China. Second, we talked about two distinct methods of education in terms of primary focus, curriculum, teaching methods, and evaluation criteria. And third, we talked about the changing educational landscape. In this part, we first examined the advantages and disadvantages of exam-oriented education and liberal education, and then we talked about criticism on Chinese education reform. Finding the right compromise and fine-tuning the details are extremely difficult jobs, but worth the effort to benefit future generations. In the end, we should think about the purpose of education and how we can take charge of our own education both inside and outside of school. Thank you for coming to class today. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.